Well, we're back. It's been a year and a half without doing one single episode, but the Retro Football Network podcast is back. Now, one of the reasons I've not recorded is because of this man who's joining us today, Mr. Elton Welsby. It's his second time on the podcast, and he's kept me very busy over the last 18 months or so, or nearly 2 years now, as you'll find out during this podcast. But this is also our first video podcast as well. So what better person to have on than an iconic TV presenter himself, Elton Welsby. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Gaz. Good to be with you again.
Are you well?
Very well, thank you.
Good. It's great to see you, of course. We've seen a lot of each other over the last 2 years, as we'll get into more detail later. Today is a special episode as well, because not only is it the return of the podcast, we're not going to talk about Elton's career. We're going to talk about one man who Elton was very close to, and there are not many people today who can say that. And then the second part of the podcast, we opened up to you, the listeners, with our own little section, which is Ask Elton. And we've got a series of questions, which you've kindly sent to me to ask Elton to keep him on his toes. And we'll get some feedback from Elton about that. But we are going to talk about Bill Shankly first, because Bill Shankly is somebody that, how would you describe Bill Shankly? I'll let you describe him, because you knew him and you were someone close to him. How would you describe the great Bill Shankly?
The most charismatic man I think I've ever met, certainly in football. If you were in a room with your back to the door and Shankly walked in, you'd know.
Okay. Why?
Because he just exuded charisma. There's almost an electricity coming off him, you know. As I say, I'm very, very privileged to get to know him particularly well. That was due to my time at Radio City, and Shankly also used to work at Radio City and for Radio City as well. But can I tell you my first encounter with him?
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
This was quite unreal. I was working for a provincial newspaper in Liverpool called the Liverpool Weekly News, and I was the sports editor. Sounds a very grand title, doesn't it? But there was only me in the sports department. Anyway, I thought I need a big story for this particular week. The paper used to go out on Thursdays. So I need a big story this week. And I thought, well, what can it be? And this was pure invention. It just came off the top of my head. I thought, I'll link Liverpool with Clyde Best of West Ham United, the Bermudan bomber, I think he was known as, because he was scoring goals for fun down at West Ham. So I did a headline, Liverpool to sign Best of the Hammers. And it ran in the paper on this Thursday morning. I didn't think any more of it. And we were all in there looking at our work on the Thursday. And a phone call came in, and it was answered by a girl called Pat Gaskell. And she said, Elton, it's a guy on the phone for you. He says he's Bill Shankly. I sort of went, oh, yeah, sure. But Bill Shankly reads the Liverpool Weekly News. What does he want anyway? So I said, hello. And he goes, are you the guy that wrote that story about Clyde Best coming to Liverpool? I'm saying, yeah, I knew it was him. Unmistakable. I said, yeah. Where did you get that load of rubbish from, son? Christ almighty, you're a newspaper man. You don't be going around spreading stories like this that have absolutely no base at all. So I was on the back foot, absolutely crapping myself, basically. I'm glad it was on the phone and not face to face, you know. And he really went at me, you know. And anyway, he opened the door a little bit, because he said, next time you get anything like this, son, you ring me and I'll put you straight. And so I whipped in and said, well, to be honest, I'm pretty new at this, Mr. Shankly. You know, any help you could give me, I'd appreciate. I'm thinking of writing a story, a day in the life of a football manager. And it would be marvelous if you would be the first, in this series that I'm planning. And he said, come and see me next Thursday. So the following Thursday, I was at Bill Shankly's office at 9 o'clock in the morning. He was already there. We went to training, drove there with him. Joe Fagan was also in the car. Saw the training, came back, spent the afternoon in his office talking. He was on the phone or doing a bit of paperwork or something like that. And I had a wonderful day with him. And I wrote the article up. And because he said, ring me anytime. So I rang him once the article had gone in, in the paper. And I said, well, how was it? You got it dead right, son. That's the way it should be. And that was the start of my, relationship with Bill Shankly, which was all too short.
When you look back at that and you think about you were invited to go to Anfield and you went to his office, etc. I can't imagine how nervous you must have been, because you'd had this exchange on the phone and then you got to see him face to face in his office, and this is his domain. For everybody listening who were not familiar with this time, Shankly was the king of Anfield at this point. He pulled the club from the second division and completely reshaped Liverpool Football Club. To this point, you're talking about maybe 10 years or more later. And this is now a footballing giant, basically because of the work that he'd done. And you had to go to his domain and just be face to face. I can't imagine what it must have felt like. But can you explain how he greeted you? What was he like when he greeted you? Can you remember? Because I'm sure he had a presence, maybe even a look. I can picture him myself in certain clothes. He was just certain way how he was dressed.
Well, he was in his office. So, I mean, when you sort of picture Bill outside, he always had a red tie on, shirt and red tie, and he'd have a sort of cream-coloured Mac. And he used to stand with his hands in his pockets like that, surveying the scene, whatever the scene was. That's my image of him from outside. But he just had a suit on. When I walked in. He just said, "Oh, son, sit down." We shook hands, obviously. I said, sit down. And then we started. And he said, "This is what I do this morning before we go to training. I need training to be absolutely right, spot on. And this is what we'll be doing." So, which was basically 5-a-sides, if I recall correctly. But he was, as I say, he didn't overpower me, which I thought he might. I would be 21 at the time. I'd only been in journalism probably about a year, 18 months at the most. But he wasn't, I think he probably was aware of that, because I looked a young lad. I had slightly more hair than I do now. So you probably thought, I'll treat him with kid gloves, But he was absolutely smashing, a wonderful host for the day. Even sort of break off. I'd be standing on the side watching the training session, him involved in the 5-a-side. And, he'd look over at me and he'd say something like, "The next goal, I'm in for a cup of tea, son." Now, the next goal in a Bill Shankly 5-a-sides, or maybe a few more, will be if Shankly's team scored it.
That doesn't surprise me. So they probably played on just until they won, I imagine.
Oh, those stories are legendary about Shanks and training. Yeah,
superb. Now, of course, it didn't work out the same for you, because later, of course, when you went from the paper and joined Radio City in 1974, Bill Shankly, of course, had already made the big decision, hadn't he, to retire? Yeah. He made the decision to retire before you went to Radio City in 1974.
But it was basically after the 74 Cup final against Newcastle. Yeah.
So he made that decision to retire. And then, of course, just like that, your paths crossed again, but in a different way, because you were working for Radio City. And, of course, who ended up working also for Radio City? Bill Shankly. Can you tell people how that came about?
Yeah, well, the MD at Radio City, a fellow called Terry Smith, who in later years actually became a Liverpool director, a big Liverpool fan, and he knew Shankly well. And he asked Bill if he would come and do a series of chat shows on Radio City, which will be recorded on a Saturday morning, say between 11 and 12, and then it will go out edited if necessary between 1 and 2. Drive time for football fans. And his first guest was Prime Minister at the time, by the way, Harold Wilson. And he came in with not the kind of security that you have these days, but there were still a few security guys there and what have you. And so they did this this interview, Bill Shankly, the first in a series of Bill Shankly interviews with Harold Wilson. And there's one question I'll never forget that he asked Wilson. He said, "Harold, who was the very first socialist?" And Wilson's, taken aback a little bit on his pipe. Are we talking about Ramsay MacDonald, Bill? No, Jesus Christ. I mean, just pure gold. So he came out. And because I was the football man and he knew me, that as soon as he came out of the studio, which, by the way, was covered in smoke because of Wilson's pipe, he came out of the studio and he made a beeline for me and he said, "Elton, son, he tried to steal my thunder." I said, "What?" It seemed to go all right for me, Bill.
Yeah.
It was pure gold. Why that tape? Radio City got a lot to answer for. That tape is lost because that is pure gold.
I know. That's so sad that that's not available to listen to.
Yeah.
And what's interesting there as well, when you relive that for us, you called Harold Wilson Harold when describing Shankly talking to him. Is that what happened, or did he not call him Mr. Prime Minister?
He started off calling him Prime Minister. That the very first thing, "My guest today is the Prime Minister." Prime Minister. Then to the question. And Wilson immediately said, "Call me Harold." So it was Harold and Bill.
Yeah, it's classic, isn't it?
For the rest of it. Yeah.
The obvious mutual respect between the two of them. It's
very much so. Well, don't forget Wilson was MP for Huyton. So he had a Merseyside connection, which is probably one of the reasons he did it.
Yes.
Other than the fact that he probably wanted to meet Bill Shankly.
Yeah.
It was a chance for him to meet the legend, the iconic Bill Shankly. So, Wally Scott actually did the booking, the arrangements for Wilson to come in. I don't know how quickly the response was. But, it was basically taking a day out of Wilson's life. Whether he had a clinic in Huyton later on, I have no idea. All I know is he turned up at Radio City, bang on, about 11:15, into the studio for 11, and it went. And then he was gone pretty quickly afterwards.
Now, what's interesting, of course, of this time, this is a period where we've had this shock retirement. How was Bill at that time regarding not being involved in the day-to-day running of football? Because he'd gone from, as I said earlier, he went to Liverpool, pulled the club from the second division, made him this incredible institution.
Yes.
And then decided to stop after this FA Cup final win, and then just go to just being, I don't know, a retired man at home with his wife, and then doing a little bit of media work. Did he talk about his situation in terms of Liverpool? Did he talk about, was he missing football, or was he just happy to retire? Did you get the feeling that he missed that day-to-day side of football?
Very much
hands-on. Yeah.
Very much so.
Yeah.
I didn't find out until much later when I was at Granada Television. I went to interview Peter Robinson, the Liverpool secretary at the time, who would now be called the chief executive officer. And he told me that 6 weeks after Shankly resigned, he changed his mind and said, "I want to come back."
Yeah.
And, basically Peter and Sir John Smith, the two people who just ran Liverpool, decided, no, we've made the decision to go with Bob Paisley and we're going to stick with it. And I think he was surprised by that. And I mean, he still went to football on Saturdays, all over the place, you know. But I think that, as you say, the day-to-day involvement, the training, etc., I think he missed that. Well, he thought he could still be a part of that when he initially retired. He'd turn up at Melwood, the training ground, and try and join in the five-a-sides and that. And the players were still calling him boss. Now, this was kind of undermining Bob Paisley. So, you know, eventually Peter and Sir John Smith spoke to him and said, look, you know, we don't think it's a good idea if you go to Melwood on a daily basis. I think that would have hurt him as well. But he was given open arms at Everton, believe it or not. His house overlooked, I mean, through one bedroom window, he could watch all of Everton's training at the Belfield training ground. So he used to go in and train at Belfield, and he would go to Goodison, welcome with open arms. You know, whereas Liverpool, when he wanted to go to Anfield, they kind of didn't know where to put him. You know.
Yeah, he should have had a special place for him, shouldn't they? Really, but I suppose it was so awkward because they didn't want to undermine Bob Paisley, and we've seen it. We've seen it at Old Trafford. Every single Manchester United game, the camera always pans on Sir Alex Ferguson. At the time, he didn't have the media coverage, but you imagine Bill Shankly today.
And as in the early 70s, they'd pan in on Sir Matt Busby.
Yeah, exactly. So it'd be the same. They'd be constantly searching for Shankly in the crowd. What's interesting, what you said about Everton there. I mean, it's clear an utter respect for Bill Shankly as a man and a football man as well, but as a person, I believe, as well, with that welcome, as you said, being neighbours with the training ground. Of course, ironically as well, a similar thing at Old Trafford where Tommy Docherty opened his arms as well to him and gave him an invite to go to any Manchester United games as well. So
yes,
you could see that the respect for him was enormous.
Well, there was the prep with Docherty and Shankly was the Preston connection, of course.
Yes.
You know.
Now, I wanted to ask you about that because, of course, as a player, he played for Preston North End. Now, so many people would say to you, oh, Bill Shankly, what a hero, he's my idol, I looked up to him. So you'd imagine that, in fact, for Bill Shankly, he was the top of the tree. But in fact, he had his own hero, his own idol. Can you tell people about who Bill Shankly looked up to?
Oh, Bill Shankly looked up to and idolized Tom Finney. There's a few little stories about that. Shanks was invited to Preston for a game. They were playing Sheffield United, and Shanks was the guest of the Preston board. And needless to say, afterwards, all the journalists wanted to get Bill Shankly's opinion. And Tony Curry had a particularly good game for Sheffield United. And one local journalist, I presume a local Sheffield journalist, has said, what do you think of Tony Curry today, Bill? How would you compare him with Tom Finney? He said, right, Tom Finney, Tom. Yeah, he would have been great today as well. Don't forget, Tom is 60. But yeah, he absolutely, he thought Finney. I once asked him, knowing what the answer would be, but I just wanted to hear him say it. I asked him, who was the greatest from that era? Tom Finney or Sir Stanley Matthews? And Shank said, Stan, good player. He used to beat a player on the outside, cut back in, beat him again, and then cut inside the fullback and go outside and then cut back again. Never scored a goal. Tom would beat the player, cut back inside and score. Tom Finney was superior.
I mean, what a fantastic reference to Tom Finney as well. I mean, obviously way before my time, but a name that's synonymous with English football as well. So
well, I do like him a lot. I would love to go back in time in my own personal TARDIS. Tom Finney is one of the players I would like to have seen and see just how good he was in the same context as, say, Dixie Dean, you know?
Now, what's interesting, of course, as well, for people who don't know, is we're talking about Bill Shankly. talked about the fact that what a man he was, but also how we built Liverpool. The irony is, of course, is that although you work for Radio City on the side, you're not a Liverpool fan at all. You're a supporter of Everton Football Club, which you've not hidden in recent times. A lot of people didn't know that through your career. They didn't know. They thought you were automatically.
It's quite strange. For 3.5 years, near enough, I was known as the voice of Anfield. You know, an Evertonian being the voice of Anfield. But it was a job. And
why were you known as that, Elton? Tell people why you were known as the voice of Anfield.
Well, I used to commentate on Liverpool's games at home and abroad for the best part of 3.5 years, which included 2 UEFA Cup finals, a European Cup final in '77. And I just became synonymous with Liverpool. And of course, during the day, if there was any breaking news stories regarding Liverpool, i.e. the signing of a player or an injury to a player, then I'd be on Radio City giving that news out to the fans. And I was just known as the voice of Anfield.
Now, the reason I wanted to raise this point is because, of course, anybody who supports Liverpool who's watching or listening to this podcast will not realise the connection that you had with the club, especially in the 1970s. Now, another reason is because last year you launched your autobiography, Game for a Laugh, which is one of the reasons why I've been very busy as well, because I worked with you on it, and you're perfectly showing it up for people watching on video. There it is, the beautiful book itself, Game for a Laugh. Now, of course, there are further stories in there about Bill Shankly. We're not going to tell all the stories today. And there's also some good stuff for Liverpool supporters about your memories of that as well.
Oh, very much so. And my relationship also with Bob Paisley, for example.
Exactly. And I think that's important. People don't automatically assume because you're an Evertonian that your book is just about Everton. In fact, it's far from it. You do go into lots of details about your career where you are talking about other football clubs as well. It's not a diary of Everton, far from it. There's so much in there about other things. Now, before we get to the question and answer part as well, just tell some of the people that you had the pleasure of working closely with. You just mentioned Bob Paisley, of course. Can you just tell the people who else you worked very closely with throughout your career?
Well, when I moved to Granada Television, subsequently to the ITV network, I got to meet a lot of very famous, say, managers, players who would join me in the presentation area, you know, for games. Jack Charlton, a particular favourite of mine, Sir Bobby Robson, Graham Souness did a few, George Best did a few, Kenny Dalglish, even though no one could understand what he was saying, he did a double header when we presented 2 games from Highbury one night. But too many to list. I don't really want to list them because it would be easy to list the people that I didn't.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Now, in terms of your book, why should people be buying your book? What reasons do you think is a good reason for someone to buy your autobiography, Game for a Laugh?
I think if they want to smile and have a bit of a giggle about certain things that happened in football during the 70s and 80s and very early 90s, I think it's an ideal Christmas present, if you like, for them. It's not that far away, is it now, Christmas? So it's called Game for a Laugh because the emphasis is on humour. It's on funny things that happen, true stories, but with a touch of humour.
Yes. And one thing about the book, which is something that you said to me very early on, you didn't want it to be a hard luck story and
rags to riches job.
None of that. And it tells an honest story about your career. And as you said, it's called Game for a Laugh for a reason. To be honest, it wasn't difficult to come up with that title in the end, was it really? Because it's simply that. It's the fun, putting the fun back in football. I don't want to go on a bit of a rant about today's game, and neither do you, but we've lost a lot of the character. Well, we've lost all the characters, we could probably say now. We've lost so many characters. We've lost that humour. The game is a lot more sterile and serious now than the days when
it's a
I
game.
started
It's a
watching.
game now that seems to be dominated by acronyms, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. PGMOL.
Yeah. Data overload. Yeah.
You know, it's just the fun is just being slowly extracted from the game.
Yeah.
I really do not like VAR because I think it takes away the spontaneity.
Yeah.
You know, I think the record to decide whether a goal should stand or not is 5 minutes. That is ridiculous.
It should be like on Countdown, where they have the 30-second clock, and if you can't get the decision by the end of it, it's finished.
Well, I think I'm not so sure about that, because I think the most important thing is reaching the right decision. It's just the length of time it takes. And for some of the so-called infringements, I find it's ridiculous. There was one the other night I was watching, and they actually showed the toe of a boot for a player to be offside.
Yeah.
In other words, he was offside by his toenail. You know, you can be offside by your nose.
Yeah.
It's absolutely ridiculous. There should be a greater gap between the two. Certainly if it's a foot, a full foot. Oh, don't get me going on that.
Yeah, sorry about that. But yeah, it's true what you say. I mean, the biggest thing for me as a football supporter is the emotion being taken away. It's a great feeling when you celebrate a goal, especially in a really important game, and then to see that taken away 5 minutes later, or being apprehensive and thinking, wait a minute, I'm celebrating, but are they going to find a reason to disallow it? And that's
for me, Gaz. Not just
that takes away the emotion of it all. It really does. We are going to pass on to some questions these people have very kindly sent in. Now, I decided to run this using the hashtag #AskElton because I thought it, of course, would be very easy to then find them on Twitter afterwards. The mistake I made was, unfortunately, Elton John did exactly the same thing about 4 or 5 years ago. And I'm sorry to say his questions came up first on the search. So if you want to know who Elton John's dream dinner party guests are, you can also find out by putting the hashtag #AskElton. But I did find the questions, and we're going to give a shout out to the people who did do that.
Yeah, I've seen a couple on Twitter, but that's all.
There's one thing. I don't want to finish at all on a sour note, but there's one thing in the book, and I don't think it's the moment to talk about it, because there is one part of the book that I think that every football fan should read in that book, and it's the chapter when, unfortunately, in 1981, Bill Shankly died, because you were the presenter of the tribute show on Granada TV on the day it happened. So I think every football fan, whether Liverpool or not, out of respect for Bill Shankly, should read that chapter.
Well, without going into great detail about that, it was the hardest thing I've ever had to do in radio or television, because it was such a shock.
Yeah.
And we put that program out, I think, after News at 10 on the day that Bill passed away. And our green room was like a who's who of football. Sir Matt Busby, Tom Finney, Harry Catterick. They were in the green room waiting to be interviewed. And we got a live link with Kevin Keegan, who was down in Southampton at the time, and he was in tears. I won't spoil it for those who want to read it, but that chapter, when I read it back, I was moved. Now I realised how much I actually missed the guy.
Yeah,
and he died in 1981. Yeah, and yet you still think, I wonder what Shanks would say about that.
No, I understand. It's the same with somebody else who features in your book as well. There are times when people think, what would Brian Clough make of this, etc. But that's another story for another podcast. We'll chat about that another time.
Are you talking about me?
Somebody said recently on another podcast, nobody can impersonate Brian Clough. They're all 5 out of 10. Having spent so much time in your company, I think you're definitely in the top 1 when it comes to Brian Clough impersonating.
Well, he did actually say to me once, Can I tell you this? Can I tell
Yeah,
you
of
this
course you can.
story?
Yeah, of
It's
course.
only one Brian Clough
Yeah, don't
story.
worry.
But
People love it. They can't get enough of Cloughie. You know we can't.
I was at the City Ground with Emily Hughes had been my studio guest, and Clough had invited us in for a drink afterwards. And he absolutely dropped one on me. He said, "Hey, I believe you take me off." And I was stunned, and I thought, what the hell? How does he know that? Because in my after dinner routine, I did quite a bit on Cloughie, and I'd done one in Derby a few months beforehand. So someone had obviously seen it and told Cloughie. And so he came and hit me with this. I believe you take me off. I said, well, yeah, it's just a bit of fun, Brian, you know.
Don't do the joke, though. Don't do the joke.
Okay. And I told him a joke, right?
Yeah.
So I told him a joke as Cloughie, and he just roared laughing. He just roared laughing. And he said afterwards, he said, you do me better than Mike Yarwood.
There you go. You can't get a better compliment than that, can you? From
The man himself.
Yeah.
Well, they always say you should never impersonate anybody if they're there.
No,
I don't know that. A lot of impressionists have said that.
Yeah, but you didn't really have much choice, did you?
He just put me on the spot, right on it. But he was like that. Yeah, at a future date, we'll talk more about Cloughie because,
definitely,
I mean, again, you know, you started off by saying, tell me about Bill Shankly, how I found him. And I said, the most charismatic man. He was, but Cloughie would be a very, very close second.
Yeah.
And I worked a lot with Brian Clough and came away unscathed.
Yes, you did well to come away.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, we're going to fire off some of these questions now.
Yeah.
And we're going to start off because this is an interesting one about your career. It's from Dave Payne. Dave has been a supporter of the book. He bought the book, and I remember he posted about it online. Very kind. He spoke very well of the book. And, of course, for that reason, Dave knows that you did the match commentary for, of course, Radio City. You also did a couple for Granada as well, didn't you? So Dave asked, would you have liked to have done more match commentary?
That's a good question. Dave, I did two. One was it was wonderful the way it worked out. Everton, the first one I did for Granada was Everton against Bristol City. And the next one I did was Man United against Arsenal. The reason I was doing the commentaries as well as the presentation was that Gerald Sinstad had become ill. He had a thing called Bell's palsy, which is like a partial face paralysis.
Yeah.
And so Gerald really could hardly talk for a couple of weeks. So I did the commentaries on those two games. Yes, I would have liked to have done more, but the days of, if you like, Brian Moore, the big match on a Sunday afternoon in London, where Brian Moore would present the programme and commentate, as Gerald did in the late 60s, early 70s in Granada. Those days are gone. You know, you think of the all-rounders, the likes of David Coleman, particularly David Coleman. Tony Gubber was another one who would present and sometimes commentate. Those days are kind of gone. You know, for example, you never see Martin Tyler presenting, Clive Tilsley presenting. You didn't see John Motson or Barry Davies presenting. So I had to choose. Well, I was press ganged really into going down the presentation route. Because I couldn't do both.
I think also as well because of the sheer difficulty, because we didn't have a lot of coverage compared to today. It was really competitive. Like you said, Brian Moore was Mr. ITV when it comes to the commentary, especially when live football came on. And then on the BBC, you'd already got Motson and Davis battling to get matches as well. So it would have been difficult as well to do that. I think you did the right thing, clearly, because you had a great career. Right, we've got a question from Gavin, and I hope I don't say his name wrong, Gavin Cullity. And he asks, and I think this is a really difficult question to answer, which guest did you enjoy working with the most on the match? Which pundit? You've just named so many people that you work with. Is there a particular one that you enjoyed working with the most?
Well, the one I had the best personal relationship with was Jack Charlton. We became great buddies before, during, and after the Euros of 1992 in Sweden. Well, we just travelled to all the stadia together. We presented the programme together. I nearly said we slept together. We almost did. But we always had adjoining rooms in a hotel in Gothenburg, Uterberg, as it's pronounced. So we, before going to bed, we congregate in one of the two rooms, probably with a bottle of White and Mackay, and just put the world to rights. So, as I say, Big Jack.
Yeah. And that's, as you said earlier, it's such a long list of people as well, who's who of football, and so for you to be able to choose one.
Yeah, probably in half an hour's time, I think, why didn't I say him? But
yeah, exactly.
No, the best relationship I had with all the guests, of all the legends that we had, was Big Jack.
And also, as well, to give a little plug back to the book, there's a full chapter on your adventures with Jack Charlton at Euro 92 as well, which is really, really entertaining.
Yeah, I like that. The Adventures of Jack Charlton in Uterberg.
Yes. We're on to a question from Kirk Jones. I think Kirk's another person who was saying how much he enjoyed the book. He's asked a number of questions, but I'll try to put it into one. He's asking about your European away adventures as a commentator with Liverpool matches at Radio City. He's asked you which were the most memorable, or the scariest, or the worst hotel. Are there any particular one that you can think was memorable?
I'll do the worst hotel and the worst trip first. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
It was I think it was October 76. It was the second round of the European Cup, and Liverpool were away to Trabzonspor in Turkey. And we had to spend the night in Ankara, and then fly from Ankara to Trabzon on the day of the game early, and then stay in a hotel in Trabzon after the match. That hotel was without doubt the worst I've ever been to in my life. And don't forget, this is long before Turkey became a popular holiday resort, which it is today. Yeah. This wasn't. Turkey was like a third world country, believe me. It was terrible. And what was worse about the trip was that the communications line between Trabzon and Radio City didn't work, and I didn't know that, because it went from Trabzon to Ankara, and then from Ankara to Radio City in Liverpool, but it never got past Ankara. I never knew that. So the whole trip was a nightmare. I ended up doing 20 minutes on the phone, commentating on the game, on the phone, sat in the Turkish dugout. I have no idea the line hadn't gone through. John Keith and I doing the commentary. We had no idea. We had no communications with Liverpool at all.
I think you can.
That was a horror trip.
You can file that under memorable for many reasons. And that trip, the hotel, the fact you had the problems with the communication as well.
But the most memorable, all aspects, was the 1976 UEFA Cup final away to the second leg, away to Bruges, because my co-commentator was none other than the aforementioned Mr. Bill Shankly. And I spent a day with Bill before we commentated on the match. And it was just a wonderful experience. It really was.
Keep your powder dry on that one as well, because there's a lot in the book about that, which is, again, must-read stuff, because that it's unbelievable. The story.
Yeah, the Adventures of Shanks in Bruges.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a good one. Now, John Halpin's asked a question here. Now, this is a question that's interesting, because talking about your days with Kickoff, I'm not sure if John's talking about something that happened before or a different situation. He's asking, do you remember on Kickoff when there was a player from all the 18 Northwest clubs dressed as Father Christmas? Now, I don't know if John is talking about the choir, because there was the kickoff choir where you had someone from each club came and sang at Christmas. So I don't know if he's talking about that, or is there a separate moment where there was a Father Christmas thing?
Unless it happened on kickoff before I joined in 1978. It certainly didn't happen afterwards. But you're quite right, guys. The big coup, as far as we were concerned, was one Christmas, again, very early 80s. We got one player from each of the 18 professional clubs in the kickoff region, the Granada region, in Granada land.
Yeah.
Come on a Thursday afternoon to sing Christmas carols, which will go out on kickoff on the Friday. And it was our boss's idea, Paul Doherty. It was his idea. And we all sort of said, you're not going to get 18 professional footballers turning up on a Thursday afternoon at Granada, at the studios in Granada, to sing Christmas carols. It doesn't happen. It did. No one let us down, not one. And we had some big, we had, I can't remember who it would be. We had a player, say, from Rochdale, the clubs lower down the pyramid, but we also had in that was Mike Shannon, Lou Macari, Alan Kennedy, so the big guns turned out as well. And they all sang a Christmas carol. But they sang more than one, but only one went out. When Gerald and I joined the choir, which was conducted by Jimmy Armfield, the late great Jimmy Armfield.
Yeah.
Now that was a wonderful experience. That really was.
Excellent. Now the next question is from Twitter. It's from someone called @CPC Gaming Demos, who's into all retro computer games and video games, which is not your thing at all, as you are not a technology fan at all.
No.
But he's asking this question: what is your most memorable moment of commentary?
Memorable of commentary?
Yeah, so I don't know if he's asking you.
That must be radio.
I don't know if he's asking about a commentary from somebody else or whether it's your personal, because I know there's one particular one that you're synonymous with from your Radio City days.
Yes. Well, that one was the winning goal for Liverpool against Saint Etienne en route to the European Cup final in '77. And David Fairclough scored the goal, and I just lost it. But I got so excited, an Evertonian getting so excited with Liverpool progressing in the European Cup. It wouldn't happen today, but it did back then. And I remember what I was told, what I said, word for word. I was told by Phil Thompson. Phil Thompson was in his hospital bed. He was injured, missed the game. He was in traction. And he was listening to the Radio City commentary. And he said he fell out of bed when Fairclough scored what turned out to be the winner. And he told me exactly what I said. He said, you said too many long balls, too many hopeful balls by Liverpool, and there's another one, and it's broken for Fairclough. And of course, then it was, because the atmosphere at Anfield that night was it was unbelievable. It really was.
Now we've got another question now, and this is going back to 1992. It's from Chris, who is known on Twitter as @BRFCChris1995.
I'll stick with Chris.
Yeah, he could be a Blackburn fan, or he could be the Bristol Rovers. But he's asking, how did you feel let down when Sky took the coverage in 1992? Now, a lot of people won't realise is that they'll think that the minute the match finished, you retired. But of course, that's not the case. As a lot of people will know in the Northwest, you continued to work for Granada for years after that. But on national TV, you disappeared for a lot of people. They didn't see you anymore once the Euro 92, in fact, ended.
That's right.
So Chris is asking, did you feel let down by not being on TV because Sky took the new Premier League rights?
No, I didn't feel let down at all, because these things happen, Funnily enough, I found out much later that ITV had actually outbid Sky, but say money talks. In this case, it didn't. But I think the newly formed Premier League just wanted a different focus.
Yeah.
I did have the opportunity of doing the European stuff after that, but I'd also been given a very good offer by Granada to continue at Granada with all the various projects that they had going, which excited me and I enjoyed very much. And of course, within that, I also got to present Busman's Holiday, which was a great different, but it was a wonderful thing to do. I'm not sure I'd want to do it again, but it was an experience,
Yeah. And totally different to the pressures of live TV, because
oh gosh, yes.
As a quiz show, you have to record different episodes, and not the same at all, is it?
We ended up doing 13 episodes in a week. Now that is just ridiculous,
Yeah, it's far too much. We've got a question now. Actually, you talked about Busman's Holiday. That was about 93, I think, wasn't it? The year after was the first ITV coverage of a major tournament after you left. So we're going to USA 94 now. You were Euro 92. You were not there for ITV's coverage of USA 94. Lee Wall's asking, what did you think of ITV's coverage, and do you think you could have improved it if you were involved?
Interesting question, Lee. We broke down a few barriers in the World Cup in 1990 and in the European Championships in 1992. That was taken even a stage further, where we presented the matches from the grounds, not from a studio in London. I can't recall what happened in 94 particularly. I know it wasn't very good. It certainly wasn't as good as the coverage in 1990 or the Euros in 92. Whether that is down to me, that's for other people to judge.
Yeah, they did it. They did some bunker, I think, over in Dallas or something like that. And I think they used that as their hub, if memory serves correctly. And I think they had Matt Lorenzo, maybe even King Dennis was with him as well, and Big Ron. And I think they did a lot based from there. But I think it was a completely different approach to the two tournaments that you're talking about.
I just know that ITV's coverage wasn't well received.
Yeah.
In the press, etc.
Yeah.
Whereas our coverage of the World Cup in 1990 was branded as complete change of tactic and a successful one.
We've got the politest question coming now from Tim Coleman, who straight away begins by saying an absolute legend. So that's very nice of him.
Thank you.
And it gets even more polite when he says, can you respectfully ask? So he wants me to respectfully ask you, sir, is it an urban myth, or did you once say, and now from the goals from Carrow Road, where it ended 0-0?
I did. I had a brain fart. We were doing highlights programs, and there was a lot of commotion going on in my ear. And I think I got sort of two different links combined. It was just a complete lapse.
Yeah.
But I did say it, yes.
Yeah.
And now the goal highlights from Carrow Road, where the game ended 0-0.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well done.
Tim will be happy, and he deserves that reply after being so polite.
That's fine.
No, it's amazing what good manners gets you. We've got one from Mike, who's clearly a Chelsea fan, judging by the name of his Twitter. He's asking, what do you think of the pre-match build-up and match analysis today? He describes it as, he's asking you, sorry, if you think it's mind-numbingly boring. Maybe that's what Mike thinks, and forensic, compared to what you were doing when you had 15 minutes. Well, in fact, you didn't always have 15 minutes. You had 5 very often, didn't you?
Between 5 and 10, but closer to 5, yeah. Well, what did he say? Mind-numbingly boring. Yeah.
Now, because it's too long, it's too forensic, goes into
I do think it is, yeah. I think it's far too long, as you say, too forensic, far too technical. Jamie Carragher, sort of saying where players should have been for this particular move, what they did wrong. Or I just don't think people care that much about it. It's much too in depth for my liking now. But I suppose I would say that, wouldn't I? But we used to get the same message over in 5 minutes to set the scene for the game that we were about to do. We'd have a menu which was very, very carefully put together, which will cover all the salient points to look out for in the game. And then our studio guest, who was always somebody different.
That's what I liked about it as well.
And quite often someone who had a connection with one of the two teams that we were playing, to get their ideas of how the game might transpire before I hand it over to Brian Moore with the commentary. Yeah. But to answer your question, I think it's far too much now.
Yeah. We've got another question. This is from M, or is also known as Mike JT67. He's asking if you could pick one player from your time as a presenter, who was your favorite player to watch? This is when you were presenting, so not as a fan, just when you were working. Who did you enjoy watching? Who was your favorite player to watch? Did someone stand out for you?
Wow. Here's one where I'll say somebody's name and then wonder why I didn't say somebody else's later.
But the thing is, Elton, well, because it's not just the league football, is it? I mean, you can pick someone from when you were covering league matches, but you did the tournaments as well. So, I mean, you worked on matches where you've got Maradona and players like that, haven't you, as well?
Well, that's very true.
Sorry to make it more difficult for you, but
no, it's okay. I'll give you two: one international and one domestic. Internationally, Ruud Gullit, I thought, was absolutely magnificent in the '88 Euros, which the Netherlands won. And whenever we went to a game where this next chap was playing, something always seemed to happen. Gaza.
Yeah. I knew you were going to say that because, of course, the stories that we've spoken about personally, I thought you were going to say that. Never a dull moment.
Oh no. You never knew what to expect with Gaza.
No.
And he was a studio guest once as well. That was nearly killed that day.
There's one question I've kept in reserve, and I'm going to ask you that in a minute because it relates to the book. But before we do, I just want to remind everybody, the title of the book is Game for a Laugh by Elton Welsby. It's available at eltonwelsby.com, or you can go direct to Amazon. For people watching on video, Elton is holding the book up now for everyone to see. You can't miss it. There's a picture of him with his great friend Jack Charlton on the cover. So that's available as well. Amazon, as I said, or eltonwelsby.com. Now, there's certain thing that happens in the book early on, which is non-football based, because you worked at a club called the Shakespeare Club in Liverpool.
Yes.
And you got quite friendly with a future Hollywood A-lister, and that was Olivia Newton-John.
I was just about to say, you're talking about ONJ.
And Paul Woodhouse asked the question.
Thanks, Paul.
How close, he asked in inverted commas, did Elton get with Olivia Newton-John?
Well, I'm a gentleman, so I'm not going to go down the road that he obviously wants me to. But we got on really well. We had dinner a number of times. We talked a great deal. But I suppose in retrospect, I mean, how many people can say that they got ditched for John Travolta?
I think that's a great way to end the Q&A, Elton. That was superb. Thank you very much for being very open and candid. There's no doubt about this. We will do another one of these again soon, because there are so many other people that I want to talk to you about. As we said, we have to do a Cloughie one for definite. Oh, yeah. We have to do a Cloughie one for sure. One of the reasons why is so we can enjoy your impersonation of him as well again. So great stuff. El, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on today and being the guest for the return of the Retro Football Network podcast. For those of you who are watching, this is new. Please hit subscribe and like if you like it. Share it with your friends. If you're following and listening to the audio on Spotify or Apple, wherever you get your podcasts, give us a like, give us a subscribe. Even if you give us 5 stars, it'll be really cool as well, because that way people will hear about it. Tell your friends if they like retro football as well. Thank you very much to Mr. Elton Welsby. It's been a superb pleasure. And we'll see you next time. Thank you very much, everybody. Goodbye.
Goodbye.